Oh yeah, DJ Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? That's right. We are back at it again for the week 13 main slate breakdown. And who's back at it? It's the DJ Nation podcast. And DJ Nation fam, welcome on in. We appreciate you guys rocking with us on a different time and day this week as we do a Friday breakdown for the main slate. Quick turnaround there, but we kind of teased that as we were doing the Thanksgiving Day slate breakdown. And shout out to everybody who came along rocking with us. Hopefully, you guys were able to rake in some dividends, rake in those buku bucks, because as we kind of alluded to on the show, right? It made sense to maybe fade Jameer Gibbs, and if you did that, and you were just definitely if you were lower on Lions besides Jameson Williams, you felt like you were at a good start of the day, and then the way the slate played out was very interesting. I won't toot my own horn, but there were some teams that had Jordan Love at the top of them where you didn't need Patrick Mahomes, and I was saying that could be the right way to go. And selfishly, that makes things better for my Bears. But I digress because we're breaking down the Week 13 main slate with you guys, and we're happy to do so here, even on a Friday night, joined by the usual suspect, the Godfather himself of TFA, Mr. Kevin Steele at Fantasy Rap 13 is where you can find him on Twitter and next. Kev, how are you doing tonight, and how excited are you to break down this 10 gamer slate for week 13?
This week 13, it's main slate has been like a roller coaster. Like it started off as like, oh my god, this slate is terrible. Like, oh, this is so gross. And then like as I've dug into it, I'm like, okay, actually, you know what? Like it's not as bad as I originally thought it was. Like it's still not like awesome, but I would say that I think this is a week where so many people use projections and sims and everything else. People, I think, this week are going to more blindly just follow those type of things, especially projections, where I think you can have some real edge this week, where you can get a little bit different. You're not going to have to, like, in weeks past where we've had these slates where we've had these monster totals in multiple games. Like, you don't have that this week. The highest total is 46.5 on this slate. And so I think it provides a different path to kind of get a little bit different. And I think it makes it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to it at the top, Kev, right? Like we don't have a team or a game total, right? That's even, over 48, and just in today's NFL and today's age, that just is kind of unheard of for a 10 game slate. And when we think about it from that context and in game environments, right, where we want to attack, and how much you and I have been talking about overstacking teams and things of that nature, like it feels, I mean, it's always in play, right? It's any given Sunday, any week that type of shit can happen. So, but it just feels less likely to happen on this week. But then, Kev, what's interesting to me and how we talked about it on Thursday or Tuesday about the Thursday slate, or even coming into this main slate, right? It's like how ugly it is. And when everybody's feeling like it's ugly, that's when I kind of get excited to play, because as you said, there's gonna be chalk that forms, and we talked about this so many times about how good chalk versus bad chalk, and definitely based on what position it is, if it's a running back, a lone running back, tends to gonna eat that chalk and feel like that's a good play because of the running back position, based as opposed to like a wide receiver or a quarterback, who comes in as super chalky. And as we break down the slate, Kev, we'll talk about some different angles and things like that, and ways you're seeing the slate, ways I'm seeing the slate that we could potentially attack. But any week that we do the DFS breakdown, there's a week to make money. There's a week for an edge to be had, and that's what we want to uncover with you guys, the people, the DJ Nation fam. So again, shout out to you guys rocking along with us. It's the DJ Nation podcast, powered by the Fantasy Authority at FF_Authority. Ryan Williams here on Twitter and X at Ryan_W. Shout out to everybody who's rocking along with us live, and everybody who's chose to listen back, on the stream, on your podcast software. We really appreciate it. Kev, as we alluded to, it's a 10-game slate, right? And even though we don't have game totals that are going to pop off of the page, we still have teams of the like of the 49ers, the Bucks, the Rams, who have been explosive as of late and pretty much all season. Seahawks are on the slate, Bills are on the slate, Chargers at home. We get the Broncos back, or I'm sorry, they won't even be on the main slate. But there's still some spots that definitely are interesting and pop at the page. And as the DJ Nation fam knows how we do here, as we break down the DraftKings main slate, we do position by position. And when we're talking about the quarterback position and where you want to go, right, the main thing that I've wanted to do all season is find that game environment first and foremost. Okay, well, we don't have many game environments that are popping off the page. So who are the players that are going to project to score a lot of points? I think from the first standpoint, where I'm looking at this week, I'm actually going to go in reverse than I usually do with the tight end quarterbacks, because I do think it is a viable cheap quarterback week. I know a lot of people are talking about Mr. Cam Ward there in Tennessee, and that's a fun spot just because of so many cheap options. I know there's still a couple things on the injury report that we're waiting on. I know Alec Manor, I believe is the rookie's name. I think he's still on the injury report. I don't know if anything's been made official, but it could be a real cheap stack there for Tennessee going against Jacksonville in game environment. Like, Jacksonville's a game environment, or a team in a game environment I've targeted pretty much all year, as long as they're not overseas, because weird shit just happens when they play in London. But that's an interesting one. I think the other, there's two interesting cheap options for me, Kev, that are going to jump off the page. One is Tyrod Taylor, for the Jets. We kind of touched on him last week. He's got some cheap passing options against this Atlanta defense that really, hasn't been too much to make, do of. I think there's definitely going to be paths for there to be success there. I kind of like, targeting this Jets mega stack where you get Tyrod, you get Brees, who we'll talk about at running back. You can get him with two wide receivers, or wide receiver and tight end who's cheap, and he's only 4,300. Like, we're talking about an ugly slate. How many, I want to be able to get some high price guys, on my roster. This is going to be a way to do so. The other one is going to be Tua for me, Kev, which is really ugly. I haven't really got on Tua a lot this year, but on an ugly slate where we're not really, getting, we're not, things aren't jumping off the page at 4,900. He makes for a viable option because I feel like Devon Achane is going to be one of the more popular plays on the slate at 8,300. You got a lot of ways to kind of get him into your roster, and people are going to be looking for 25, 30 points. He's probably one of the more sure ways to get that this week, at that price tag. They got New Orleans on the other side, but this is Miami at home. Like, weird things can happen at home. They're coming back. I believe they were just overseas, if I'm not mistaken, or they haven't been on the main slate for a while. And so they've kind of been out of sight, out of mind, but we've targeted Jalen Waddle, without Tyreek Hill all year. Their tight end position is kind of, in flux up in the air. There could be a cheap spot there to target. And against this New Orleans team, I'm willing to take shots, on the other side. They've got some injuries that they're dealing with, but also some other players that are going to jump out to make a game stack viable. So, for me, those are the two cheap options. I think, again, we have to look at Jacoby Brissett. I'm interested to see what happens with Marvin Harrison Jr., if he's going to be coming back or not, because, that would throw a wrench in it, only from the standpoint of we've really had projected, volume going to, a certain amount of guys, right? And so you add one more player in there, kind of muddies it up a little bit, but still a good play at only 5,800 going against this Tampa Bay defense that we've considered a pass funnel for some time. But that, and really on the other side, I feel like if Baker is playing, right, he's been questionable. He got a full practice in today, right? And so if he's playing, I think that makes that game environment all the more viable. To pop off. I think, I'll probably let you talk about him a little bit more, but of the high end guys, I think that Herbert is interesting at 6,500. And he makes some easy, stacking options going against that Vegas Raiders defense. It's been a spot that we've kind of targeted Herbert all year long, and this is another spot to do so where people might have forgotten him. But the real interesting one, Kev, is Matthew Stafford, right? Matthew Stafford's 7K. And it's so expensive to stack him because, Puka is, almost 10K. He's 9,000 now. So he has a price discount. But then Adams is 7,500. So just to get two stacking options that you want with him, it's 16,500 right there of salary. So it makes it really, you really want that game environment to pop off. And with Carolina on the other side, it's like, oh, can they be pushed or what have you? But I don't really know if the Rams need to be pushed necessarily, Kev, with the way that Sean McVay has kind of treated Matthew Stafford all year. I mean, their pass rate in the red zone's absolutely insane. Devontae Adams might as well be, their pseudo goal line back, the way that he's getting, he has like 22 end zone targets on the year or something crazy like that. It's absolutely absurd. And then Puka, it's kind of like the Jackson Smith and Jigba conversation that we had last week when he was 9K. Like, we know what he needs to do to pop off. But if stuff starts to flow his way, but then they're flowing Stafford's way, Stafford's in the conversation for MVP with the numbers he's putting up. He's got, multiple games over the past 6 with 3 touchdowns. He's got a couple of games with 4 touchdowns. If we're hard pressed to kind of find where points are going to be flowing, like, let's just take a shot on this Rams offense who's been putting up points in bunches. And it makes an uncomfortable stack, right? Which is nice on paper because you could just say, okay, I'm going to try and lock in these points. Maybe I get 100 from these 3 players, and that rightfully so because you're paying for it. But then let me see what other value I can fit in on this week when people are going to try and, pick pieces all across the board. And I'll just take it from that way. There are some interesting angles from Carolina's side to do a run back if you want to, but for the Rams standpoint, I don't think they necessarily need run backs in their stacks with how expensive they are. How are you feeling about the slate, Kev, from quarterback position, and where are you going?
So I think for me, I'm going to start with Justin Herbert versus the Raiders. I think, he's 6,500, but I mean, he's averaging 245 passing yards, nearly 2 passing touchdowns per game. He's also used his legs a lot this year, picking up 30 or more rushing yards in 6 of 11 games this year. He's averaging 20.5 DK points per game. And the Chargers have been really pass heavy. They're ranked 4th in pass rate over expectation. And the Raiders are top 10 in terms of a pass funnel defense. And this is a prime schematic matchup. And this is going to be something, this game is going to be something I talk about a lot throughout this, the other positions, because the Raiders run cover 3 at the highest rate in the league. And against cover 3, Herbert averages 24 DraftKings points per game and ranks inside the top 10 in fantasy points per dropback against it. And this is probably my favorite stack that I want to get to. And it is Justin Herbert stack. And there's a clear stacking partners against this defense that we want to go with. And we'll talk about him as we get to those positions. But so Justin Herbert for me is probably my favorite play, one I'm going to have the most exposure to. And then I agree with you on Jacoby Brissett, 5,800. I mean, he's just been phenomenal since taking over at quarterback. A lot of it's been garbage time, but we'll take it just the same. But he's completed 67% of his passes, 317 passing yards, and a score for 18.7 last week against the Jags. But since taking over, he's averaging 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, has a strong 72% completion percentage, and has 105.2 passer rating, which ranks 9th highest. And then you have this matchup against the Bucs, where over the last 4 games, the Bucs have allowed 281 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns per game to quarterbacks, and allowing 28.5 DraftKings points to quarterbacks. So it sets up really well. I don't know if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play. He said he still felt a little bit of discomfort whenever he was running. So I wouldn't be shocked, especially since they're out of it, if they hold him out for another week with this, which would probably be better. I would like it more. And I think we've gotten to the point where, if you want to stack him, like, you're going to have to want it to stack Trey McBride now, because Trey McBride's finally $7,800. So they've priced Trey McBride appropriately, where before it was like, okay, we're shoving him in. Now, like, Trey McBride has to score you 30 plus DK points for him to kill you. But with Brissett, he's shown that he can bring along multiple pass catchers. So whether it's Michael Wilson, who's still very viable, whether it's Greg Dortch, you don't have to go with just Trey McBride here in a stack against the Bucs. And so, like, the only thing that does worry me is the Bucs side, is that because Baker Mayfield's playing through this injury, and he's done this before. Years ago when he was with the Browns, his final year with the Browns, he played through a very similar injury, and he just never looked the same and had one of his worst years of his career. And he's kind of looking like that now. Like, he has just not looked right at all since suffering this injury. And so it does give me pause, but I will say that, the Cardinals defense has really been bad recently. And so it's one you could definitely exploit. So this game has the potential to be like maybe a little bit more of a shootout atmosphere here. But Jacoby Brissett makes a lot of sense. A couple that I do really like that are on the cheap side. CJ Stroud comes to mind at 5K. I think he's one of the best point per dollar plays on this slate at 5K. He's missed he's missed the last 3 games with concussion, but obviously returning this week. But before his concussion, Stroud was playing really well. He was averaging 260 passing yards and over 2 passing touchdowns and 21 DK points. Oh, in those games prior, the previous 4 games prior to that. And so in this game matchup here against the Colts have allowed the 11th most passing yards per game. They have limited the damage in terms of touchdowns, but they still have allowed the 13th most DraftKings points to the position to quarterbacks this year. And so, this is a dome matchup here for CJ Stroud. Again, a spot here where we kind of know, who to stack him with, whether it's Nico, whether it's Jaden Higgins here in this spot, or if you wanted to put in Dalton Schultz, you could do that as well. So I do like CJ Stroud here in this spot at 5K. And then lastly, you've already brought him up, but I'm going to bring it up again. It's going to be Cam Ward. And I think there's a reason why people like him here, because since firing the head coach, this offense just has looked better. Cam Ward has looked a lot better as a quarterback. He scored 14.1, and then last week against the Seahawks, he put up 24 DraftKings points. And I think the most notable is, for the most part this year, if you're going to say anything about Cam Ward, I think he's played, it's like 7 of the top 10 defenses is who he's played already this year. He has had a murder's row of really bad matchups for the most part this year. And so some of that you could kind of pass away, but this is one of the best matchups that he's going to see all season against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have been terrible against quarterbacks all year in the passing game. This has been a spot we want to attack. And the one more thing with CJ Stroud with Cam Ward, I think that is encouraging is he's actually starting to run the ball. Over the last 2 games, he's had 30 or more rushing yards in each of his last 2 games, which is by far the most he's done all year. He really wasn't asked to run, but recently he's been doing so. And so I think Cam Ward, is also in play this week at $4,600. And he's kind of easy stack. Chimere DK, which we'll talk more about when we get to wide receivers, but he's in play. And I think if you want to go with one of the tight ends, now it's a little bit tougher with one of the tight ends there because the fact that they basically split routes between Gunnar Helm and Chig Okonkwo. But the Jaguars have been awful against tight ends this year. They'll have the second most DraftKings points to the position. They've allowed 7 touchdowns already. So, you could go there. And then the easy run back partner is Travis Etienne, which we'll talk about when we get to running backs. But you run it back with Travis Etienne there in that stack, and it allows you to play whatever you want. You can play Devon Achane. Right. You can play Puka Nacua, whenever you make that stack. And so I do think Cam Ward, I'm going to have exposure to him because of what he opens up.
Yeah, no, he definitely, the pieces are so cheap, right? And then we could have, it could be concentrated offense if there's no Io Manor. Chig Okonkwo's on the injury report as well, too. So that's something we have to monitor. He's dealing with the foot. If he's not able to go, you have DK, you have Helm. It just makes so much, it's gonna be hard to not want to click on him because of that, the pathways. And I'm happy you brought up the rushing upside from him, Kev, because that's definitely made a difference, for a guy who doesn't have a game of multiple passing touchdowns so far on the year. We want to be able to make up for that production somehow, and by doing so on the ground would definitely be a nice way to do so. These cheap quarterbacks, Kev, are definitely, I feel like, the more news that we get are going to pop off of the page because we do still have some high priced options that people are going to want to, fit into lineups to get the point, assurity, especially with the way that Trey McBride comes in too, right? You mentioned his elevated price tag, but how good he's been. So there's going to be 2 to 3 spots, I feel like, that people want to pay up for above the 7,800 range to 8,300, range, which is where Devon Achane comes in at. Anything else at quarterback you want to touch on, Kev? Because I think running back's pretty interesting this week as well too, but
no, I think that's. I do think if in that Jacksonville game, you could play the other side with Trevor Lawrence. He's gotten there. He doesn't have a particularly incredibly high ceiling, but he's been useful. He's not going to kill you for the most part. He's going to give you probably anywhere from 18 to 20 DraftKings points, but he's not going to kill you doing it. But I do agree with you though. The one quarterback you brought up that I think that is really is Tyrod Taylor at $4,300. And again, I think it's pretty clear who you stack him with. It's John Mechie if you feel ballsy enough to play AD Mitchell, who is seeing as much opportunity. Like he is seeing just as much opportunity as John Mechie's seen like 7 targets each of the last 2 games, but he's done absolutely nothing with them. But Taylor at $4,300, and I like the option of bringing with Brees Hall because we'll talk about it when we get over to running back. But Brees Hall, I think, is a really solid play as well, and I think with the pass catching upside there, you could sack him there. So I really agree with you on Tyrod Taylor. Like I just find myself really wanting to play the low end because the top end outside of Justin Herbert, who's 6,500, like Josh Allen, I don't think the Steelers have enough to push Josh Allen to make him like have to be like super Josh Allen, like the guy that could come out and drop a 40 burger on you. So if that's the case, then there's really none of the other high price because with Stafford it makes it so tough because it's so expensive. Like it is, there's no cheapie that you can fit in there to kind of level out the stack, right? It's because it's so consolidated between him, Puka, and Devontae Adams. I know people are going to probably try to chase the Cody Parkinson stuff from last weekend on what was it, Sunday Night Football or whatever it was, where we scored. But that's not going to happen again. That's not usually the way that things work here with this offense. So it makes it much harder to play 7K Matthew Stafford. But I would on the flip side to that is that they are missing. They're missing their safety, Taylor Moorick, who gave the old dick punch to Juwan Jennings, got himself suspended, and then J.C. Horn is in concussion protocol, so so he's going to be out, and so like that really hurts their secondary. And we'll talk about it more with wide receivers because there is one of the wide receivers that I'm going to be trying to jam in wherever I can. But so it just makes it tougher to play Stafford. I think I'd rather get my exposure to that offense through maybe like a single piece.
Yeah, well, and let's talk about running back because it's interesting this week, Kev. I mean, we have Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, James Cook, all on the slate, and then we get Bucky Irving back this week, who's got in full practices. He's only 7K. He's going to be real interesting from a game environment standpoint and also from a team standpoint. If we get Baker, I feel like if we get Baker, I think that this Arizona Tampa Bay game does have a real shot to produce some really strong pieces. And Bucky would be a one to start for me. He's 7K. He's got the Q tag coming off. How many people are going to be willing to get there? I don't know. Obviously, you've talked about it, Kev. If he's popping in projection models and the ownership comes up, we'll see. But I think he is a really strong play this week, just from the standpoint of he could be overlooked than what he should be. That game really is standing out to me on paper as it stands. From the high end option, it's going to be Devon Achane for me. I just the way that I play single entry 3 max, it's going to be hard for me to get away from him. I hate to ever say that I'm going to lock button a player who's not like the stone minimum and just a nut spot, but like he's going to be on three quarters of my lineups this week. I think Bijan Robinson would be my second favorite high end play because of my Tyrod Taylor exposure. Just makes a lot of sense in the game stack there with Kirk Cousins being back in the mix. He could get more pass catching work to make that viable and stand out. With Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey, probably Jonathan Taylor again. He's 9,800. He's going against Houston. I really respect this defense. Like, I don't know that I'll get to him this week. If I end up with the last spot that has that salary remaining, I might consider it to get exposure to him. But Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he's going against Cleveland, probably one of the strongest run defenses that he'll face. He could do it any week as well too, but he's 9,300. Like, when it gets to that point, if it's not a surefire matchup, I'm much willing to spend that money on receivers. So for me at the top end, it's going to be Bijan and Achane. Like I said, I do have interest in Bucky Irving. James Cook's an interesting one for me because, I always feel like Buffalo can score 30. And so if I'm not playing Josh Allen, I always think that James Cook should be in the mix. I'll probably keep him in my pool, but he's not going to be one that I'm going out of my way to try and get to. Mid-range is definitely strong. We got ETN there at 6,500. The Jaguars have been running a lot. They're facing Tennessee. Like, there's really, nothing left to be said. I know Bashal Tutin was a popular option for some people last week and really, dudded maybe he could, be the one to get the work against Tennessee. But I do think Etienne will be a strong play in models. I think Brees Hall is a phenomenal play at 6K. Like, he's my second favorite play outside of Devon Achane, just with the pass catching work, as you kind of alluded to, Kev, that he could see. The price tag really just doesn't equate to the catalyst that he can be in this offense. We're talking about the likes of, A.D. Mitchell and John Mechie and Mason Taylor as the receiving options. Like, Brees Hall is just going to be in the mix every week, for me going forward at this price tag, in good matchups as well. Then in the 5K range, Cav, and even in the 4K range, it starts to get interesting. We do have, we have to monitor the Arizona situation, because Benson's out, Amari DeMarcado's out, Bam Knight is banged up. So do we have Michael Carter, come back into the mix of 4,200, the corpse of Michael Carter, who, people were spending fab on in regular season, season long fantasy teams, and then he gets just out of the way, but they might not have a choice. It's like Michael Carter and Jamar Jefferson and some other likes of guys that we really don't know about, if Bam Knight can't go. So 4,200 Michael Carter would become interesting if Bam Knight's rolled out. I think that, with Devin Neal will be in the mix at 5K, strong collegiate running back who definitely had some games going against Miami. It's on the road, but, does he see work, or do they just end up giving it to Taysom Hill? Who knows? But I think he's going to be a strong on paper play going into Sunday. I think that outside of the guys that I mentioned, I'm not really interested in all too many other players. Kaimi Vandal at 5,700 would be another one where I wouldn't try and force him onto lineups, but could possibly get there if I'm not getting to Justin Herbert, just because I do like the Chargers to put up some points as well this week. And I'm not touching the Seattle backfield until further notice. I just can't trust it with the way that Walker and Charbonnet are being utilized. What's standing out to you, Kev, as we talk about running back position and who might have missed in breaking this down?
Well, I completely agree with you on the Devon Achane. Like, it's going to be really hard, and he's going to be the most popular running back on the slate, and for
Right,
an incredible spot. Like, he's back to being like ultra efficient, like he was like his rookie year, whenever he was just breaking things. Like, it's not quite to that level, but he's still 5 yards per carry. He's, which is top 5 among running backs, and he's first in explosive run rate, 11th missed tackles, 4th per attempt. He's seeing a ridiculous 22% target share. And so, like, he's just been incredible, and he's 8,300, and he's not the most expensive running back on the slate, and it's just going to be hard to get away from him. Good matchup against the Saints, so love him. The Brees Hall stuff, this is definitely a prime Brees Hall spot, and we've actually seen his targets go up with Tyrod Taylor, and that's what I was alluding to with him, is that we've seen an increase in target share from 11% with Justin Fields up to 16% with Tyrod Taylor. And I mean, he's the second highest explosive run rate, 3rd in yards per reception, 10th in yards per outrun. He's seeing about 18 touches a game now, and this is a great matchup against the Falcons, who allow the third most schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs. And so, like, it's a prime spot against the Falcons, and the Falcons are only 2.5-point favorites here. So, like, this isn't a spot where you're like necessarily afraid that the Jets are just going to get blown out in. And so it's like, so I think that he is 100% in play at 6K. Like, it feels like he should be probably closer to 7K in a spot like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're getting a great, he's one of the best values on the slate because of it. So I love him. Travis Etienne, I think, is a phenomenal play as well. And all year, there's been this push for Bashal Tootin, and I like Bashal Tootin, the player, and we kind of got hoodwinked a couple of weeks ago whenever he ran out, and then the next week, everybody wanted to play him, and he got absolutely nothing. But Travis Etienne has been a constant, really good all year, and people want to make this out like it's a Bucky Irving situation from a couple of years ago because Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator, and then Bucky Irving kind of came out and took the job from Travis Etienne, or Rachaad White, excuse me. But like that has been the case with Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne has been awesome all year. He's averaging 15.4 carries, 3.4 targets, but he's averaging damn near 100 total yards a game, 88 total yards a game. He has the 12th most touchdowns. Over the last 4, he's been even better. Etienne, he has been the RB4, averaging 18 DraftKings points per game over that span per touch. I mean, he's been really good. 8th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 16th in yards after contact per attempt. And then you get this Titans matchup who, over their last 5 games, have started to struggle against running backs and have allowed a 5.32 yard per carry, which ranks 4th highest. They've allowed the 7th highest explosive run rate and the 3rd highest yards before contact per attempt. And so Travis Etienne, 6,500, absolutely love him as a play. And so I think those 3 are like pretty much my top 3 favorite plays. I think James Cook is also in a good spot against Pittsburgh. So I do like James Cook, 7,600. I think he's a pretty strong play if you can afford to pay up for multiple running backs. But then in the 5K range, you kind of talked about it, and one spot I think you might be able to get to is Kenneth Gainwell at his cost at 5,300. He's being heavily utilized in the passing game. Recently, last week he had 6 receptions. The week before that, he had 7 receptions on 8 targets. Basically, when they fall behind, they go to Kenneth Gainwell, and you would figure that that's probably what's going to happen here in this matchup against Buffalo. And so, Kenneth Gainwell, I think, is kind of a sneaky play at cost. I don't mind Jaylen Warren either, because we know that the Bills are terrible against the run. They've been awful against it all year. And so, I think he's in play. I think Woody Marks is actually not a bad play. He's kind of taken over for Nick Chubb. I mean, over this last, 4 games, he's seen 16 carries, 18 carries, 14 carries, and 10 carries. And, the only frustrating thing is he's not being utilized in the passing game. I don't know why all of a sudden his pass catching work has dried up. And some of that really could be because of Davis Mills, because that's when it fell off, is when Davis Mills took over at quarterback. Mm-hmm. So I do wonder if that is more of a product of Davis Mills and not so much of Woody Marks. Because Woody Marks coming out was thought to be one of the better pass catching running backs in the draft. And I don't know why that has changed for him. But they've also, had some more positive game scripts also where they've been playing with leads recently. But either way, I think Woody Marks, in a spot where the Colts have started to struggle against the run, they lost to Forrest Buckner, which is a big blow to that defensive front. And so, I think Woody Marks is going to be very low owned. But at 5,800, I like him as well. I like that game environment. And then, this spot here, originally, I was not excited at all to play Quinshon Judkins at 6,200, but this weather for this game looks absolutely brutal. We are talking about 20 to 25 mile an hour sustained winds, gusts up to 40 miles an hour. There's going to be rain the entire game with some chance of snow. This game looks like it's going to be gross. I don't see either of these teams throwing the ball at all. I think this is going to be just ground and pound. And so, Quinshon Judkins makes some sense in that way, because he's not going to be utilized in the passing game. But if this game does not take off in terms of points, which I don't think it will, then I think Judkins could come into play, at home at $6,200. You could look to go with him as well, and nobody's going to play him. He's going to be less than 5% owned. The other one, Ashton Jeanty, it's tough because on one hand, the Chargers have been really bad against the run. They've been bad against the run all year. Mm-hmm. But the Raiders' offensive line is terrible. They've lost Colton Miller, they lost Jackson Powers-Johnson, which were their only 2 good offensive linemen they had. Now we don't have Chip Kelly now at offensive coordinator. They bring in Greg Olson for the 3rd time to be their interim head coach or interim of their offensive coordinator. Their interim offensive coordinator. It's the 3rd time they've done it. But he's talked about wanting to get Ashton Jeanty more involved through the passing game. It sounds like it was an absolute train wreck there with Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator. They were saying that he was calling plays that weren't even installed in the offense. Which is absolutely wild. But Ashton Jeanty, at 6,400, I guess, is a great matchup. But it worries me in terms of how much they're going to utilize him and stuff like that, or what this looks like for him. But I still think he's a good play. We've seen some ceiling for him. I mean, we've seen even just last week against Cleveland, which is not a good matchup for running backs. He still put up 25 DraftKings points. he's being more involved. He's seen 16 targets over his last 2 games as well. So like Genty's not a terrible play, and that's how you beat the Chargers. Is you have to beat them on the ground because they are elite against the pass. They have been one of the best pass defenses in the entire league this year. They're only allowing like 160 passing yards per game, which is bottom 2 in the NFL. So, but they are terrible against the run.
Yeah, that's an interesting call there, Kev, for the OC to be back, because I'm pretty sure like that was the OC, right, when Josh Jacobs was there for the Raiders and feeding him the rock. So so maybe they do get back to their ways of getting their best player the ball, which would definitely serve them well, even in a tough matchup against the Chargers. Like we know that there's one path for the Raiders to be successful the way that Geno's been playing this year. So that's an interesting call out, Kev. Appreciate you bringing that one up. Yeah, I mean, for me, running back is going to be pretty straightforward. Sunday 10:30 Central Time, whenever the 90 minutes before game kickoff for you, when inactives come, that's something that the guys, the DJ Nation fam needs to be monitoring, because that'll start to shape the slate. But unless we get some crazy breaking news, like I'm going to be straightforward there at running back this week.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any reason to get too crazy with the running back position this week. I think there's a clear path to the players you want to play, and even Jonathan Taylor. I think you kind of mentioned him a little bit, but like, I mean, him being 9,800 makes it so tough because he has to have like an explosion spot. I will say, Houston has allowed explosives to running backs this year. They've overall been pretty good against the run, but they have struggled at times allowing explosive runs to running backs, and obviously that's Jonathan Taylor's MO. And you do wonder, because the way that the Colts have played this year has been more so they open throwing the ball and then to get a lead, and then they lean on Jonathan Taylor to kind of close it out. I don't know if you're going to be able, because I don't know if you saw like the videos going around this week of Daniel Jones, who has like a fractured fibula.
No, I haven't seen the video. So
like himself, like he looks like he does not want to be dropping back, but he's going to play. And so like, do they just try to lean on the run a lot more than they typically would? But I mean, Jonathan Taylor, could get there, but I will say overall it's a really bad matchup against Houston. Just their defense is so incredible, but at the same time, like I've said, they have had trouble at times, limiting explosive runs, which is obviously right up Jonathan Taylor's alley.
Yeah, no, Daniel Jones isn't going to get surgery, right, or do anything about it. So that'll be an interesting one to monitor just as it stands going forward. And a lot to do, right? That's a tough matchup, or not a tough matchup, but that's an interesting matchup, at least when we're talking about the AFC South playoff picture for wins, especially with CJ Stroud coming back. Probably an opportune time to be able to take control there. So very, very interesting one that shapes up there. That could be super competitive on paper. Kev, as we keep it rolling and talk about wide receivers, I'll stay on that game because Nico Collins, who I rarely ever play as a one-off, but the past couple of games that he's had against Indy have been absolutely, incredible. He just loves playing against this team. When you look at his stats, he's got, what did he have? 7 and 146 and 1 against them a couple years ago. Last year he went for 195 and 1, and then 8 117. Didn't get into the end zone, and that's the kind of the name of the game, right? He's been at this kind of 6,700 6K range price tag, for a majority of the year, and we have yet to see like a huge explosion game for him, and that could come with CJ Stroud being back and just leaning into him. I think he's going to be a play that I definitely circle around. I love the whole 6K range as we talk about wide receiver this week. I love Jalen Waddle. I love Nico Collins. I'm kind of coming around to Chris Olave, even though he's on the injury report. Seems like it was something minor. He could be back because I like that Miami side of the game. So I'm going to have probably exposure to him, especially with the running back situation that they're kind of, that's happening there. love Lad McConkey this week at 6,300. It seems like he's been really getting back into the mix. Not as insane of a role as he had his rookie year, but definitely carving out a role as less work starts to go Keenan Allen's way and Kamora's way. QJ's been struggling a little bit. He's only 4,900, which makes him really interesting, whether he's on the Lad or whether he's in a Justin Herbert stack or not. But I think Lad McConkey's great. And then we get Brian Thomas back this week, at 6,200. He's just a guy that I'm always going to be accustomed to. I know that they got Jacoby there now, and Parker Washington's been solid, but at 6,200 against Tennessee, he makes for a really good play. I think a good leverage play off of ETN possibly too, or maybe you full game stack that game with Cam Ward and 2 or 3 guys, and then you play 2 Jacksonville guys and just call it a day. But Brian Thomas being back in the mix is definitely interesting. Before I go back to the top end range, Kev, the Arizona Cardinals situation is going to be interesting to monitor. We got Michael Wilson's priced up to 5,900, which is fair, probably even a little bit too cheap, if you ask me. Like, he should definitely have that $6K price tag to his name with 33 targets over the past 2 weeks, and Jacoby Brissett has just been funneling targets his way. Definitely makes it tough if we do have Harrison Jr. back, but if Harrison Jr. gets ruled out, like, Michael Wilson is definitely in play, whether you're playing, Jacoby Brissett, whether you're playing Trevor McBride, it really doesn't matter. Like, he's definitely got a strong floor that he's been showing us thus far this week. In the 5K range, Kev, I think Khalil Shakir will probably be popular. I could just see, he's just that guy, similar to like a Chris Olave almost, like projection models will flow to with the Keon Coleman situation that's been going on in Buffalo. And, just with Dalton Kincaid being on the injury report, he'll definitely jump off the page. Another guy in the 5K range who I need to bring up, who I definitely have a lot of interest in because I have interest in this game, is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney back with Kirk Cousins. He's getting funnel work. There's no Drake London. I just, I think that we're back on the Mooney train for all intents and purposes until London's back. At least I think that the work is just gonna get funneled his way. On the 4K range, DK, I feel like I was a week early last week because I talked to you and Maddie about him and how much interest I had because the wide receiver injury report was kind of coming out late and people weren't kind of thinking about him. He gets there right in the box score, luckily, or however you want to call it, with the return touchdown, but did see work from Cam. And so with another week of practice with the two of them going and the way that that's shaping out at 4,400, he's interesting. I do like Malik Washington as well too at 4,300 because I'm going to be interested in Tua stacks. When we get back up to the top end range, Kev, I did want to talk to you about your interest in these guys because really, like, if you're like, I talked about the 6K range, and that's kind of where you were living, Kev, unless you're playing Jamar Jefferson, the Rams wide receivers, or Jackson Smith and Jigba. And 2 of those receivers cost 9K or more. And then Devontae Adams is at 7,500 and Jamar Justin Jefferson, excuse me, not Jamar, Justin Jefferson at 7,100 against the Seattle team, right? Like with with now his 3rd quarterback, I believe, on the season, just hasn't been going for him. So, the interest for these guys is pretty small for me. Outside of like my Matthew Stafford, mega stacks, I think I could potentially see myself getting to Adams or Nakua on teams as one-offs because I just think the Rams are just in such a good position to put up points every week at this current offense that they're running. So touchdowns can definitely flow. Multiple touchdowns could flow to either one of those guys. But I love the mid-range so much, so I'm curious to see what your take is on these high-priced guys and where you're going this week.
Yeah, I think first is Puka Nacua. Like, I want to try to find ways to get him and actively try to get him into my lineup because he's 9K. I know he hasn't necessarily had, like some like smash games in a while. Like, it's been a lot of like he's been safe, like scoring you 16 to 20 most weeks, but like he hasn't really had a smash game even really at all this year. Except for the week 4 when he put up damn near 40, but schematically, this is the best matchup he can see because the Panthers run cover 3 at one of the highest rates in the league, 41% of the time. And he absolutely annihilates. When I mean annihilate, I mean 0.94 fantasy point per route run. Just for like context, like the next closest is 0.8. And so like he absolutely smashes this. And he actually has been targeted on 44% of routes against cover 3 this year. And so I think this sets up really well for Puka. I know maybe we're worried about the Panthers being able to push it back, but like the Rams have thrown at such a high rate this year. Like they're top 5 in red zone passing rate as well this year, which is not typical for Sean McVay offenses. Before it was like once you got inside the red zone, they were giving it to Kyron Williams. But I think that's been one thing that's killed Kyron Williams this year because once they get inside the red zone, they're still chucking it. Like they're looking for when you have Devontae Adams, he's been a big benefactor of that. And so, but I think Puka like sets up really well to absolutely smash this weekend in the spot. So if I'm going to pay up, like I really want to try to get to him. I think you brought up Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is also in a really good spot here in this matchup against the Saints. Very similar to the Panthers. They are very similar. They run cover 3 at one of the highest rates in the league. He's done very well against cover 3. 0.7 fantasy points per route run, against cover 3 defenses this year. So that is the base coverage for the Saints. And so really like Jalen Waddle as well, but he's also going to be really popular. He's going to be one of the top 2 or 3 highest owned wide receivers on the slate, but still very good matchup. So I really like him. 5K range. So I talked about Justin Herbert, and I don't like Lad McConkey as much this week. If my stack is going to be Keenan Allen and Aronde Gatson is going to be my stack because the Raiders, as I already talked about, run cover 3 at a really high rate, and Keenan Allen has killed cover 3, 0.8 fantasy points per game against cover 3 this year, which is a very good number. Even at 33 years old, though, he's been really solid. He's still averaging almost 8 targets per game, which is top 10. And he's also top 10 in target per out run rate. He's top 10 in red zone targets. He ranks 24th in yards per out run, 31st in yards between pass attempts. They tend to move around a lot. He actually only runs 36% of his routes from the slot. But like I said, I mean, he absolutely crushes in this schematic matchup. And the last time these two teams played each other, which was, I think, week 2, Keenan Allen had five catches on 7 targets, 61 yards, and a touchdown for 17.1 DraftKings points. The Raiders are also really bad against wide receivers, allowing the 6th most DraftKings points to wide receivers. So I think this sets up really well for Keenan Allen. And I typically would have said Quentin Johnson also makes a lot of sense because, he's done a pretty good job against cover 3 this year. However, what we've seen is Aronde Gatson has taken over that role from Quentin Johnson. Like what they were doing with Quentin Johnson earlier in the year when Quentin Johnson was smashing, they've been giving that to Aronde Gatson, and Aronde Gatson as well. He's been even better against cover 3 than Keenan Allen, and he actually has he almost has it's like a 3.8 yards per out run against cover 3 this year. And so I really love that stack of Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Aronde Gatson. And it's a cheaper stack. I know that Herbert is more expensive at $6,500, but when you factor in you're playing a 5K wide receiver and I think a $4,300 tight end, it brings down the cost of that stack quite a bit. And so I like that stack a lot. It's one of my favorite stacks that I'm going to be playing this weekend. And like I said, it really kind of opens things up to be able to play some other things here. It's not as expensive of a stack. So I really like Keenan Allen. He's not going to be popular at all as a play. I completely agree with you with Darnell Mooney, $5,300, especially with Drake London out. And then the 4K range, I already brought up Shamiri DK, but he's been really good. I mean, recently, I know he's had a couple games, a couple down games, but even before that, he has the game where he scored 16.9, 16.4 DraftKings points. And then he had 21.4 last week on 7 targets. So he's become the favorite target for Cam Ward, and they also use him on punt returns. He's been incredible doing that as well. But he's 4,400, so I love him. And then I brought up Jaden Higgins, or I brought up CJ Stroud, but Jaden Higgins is a great. I mean, recently he's been his role recently should not be a $3,800 wide receiver or $3,900 wide receiver because he's seen 9, 7, 7, 1, whatever that was the Denver Houston game where nobody could throw the ball. It was a super ugly game, and then another 8 targets. So he's seeing a really solid target share. Whether with Davis Mills, also with CJ Stroud. And so they've really talked about emphasizing getting him the ball and getting him more involved in this offense. Second round pick this year, and they've done that. And he scored 3 touchdowns over the last 5 games as well. And so Jaden Higgins is a very cheap option at $3,800 or $3,900, excuse me. And then John Mechie. I think if you're liking that game, I think John Mechie is probably the way to go. AD Mitchell makes some sense too. But it's just AD Mitchell has not done anything with the targets. I mean, he's seen, 13 targets the last 2 games and has really done nothing. He has 3 catches, on those 13 targets. So he just hasn't been efficient or effective whatsoever. But he keeps seeing the targets. And then John Mechie, I think, like I said, is the other one at $3,800 that we can look at.
Yeah, I think I'm happy you brought up the Jets guys because I absolutely do love Tyrod this week, and so I mean I'm interested in Mechie because he's shown the propensity to be able to withstand all these errors that AD Mitchell has been making, but AD Mitchell's still like up there in air yards. They just haven't. He just they're not hitting, but that's the type of profile that this guy has. He's going to. At some point, if they keep giving it to him, they're gonna hit, and I just want to be on him when it does hit. I don't want to miss out. So on my Tyrod Taylor teams, like he just has to be on there. It's probably going to be less likely that I play him as a one-off as I was doing more so when we got excited to him first kind of being uncovered. But they got this guy in there, from the Colts for a reason. So I'm gonna keep going back into the well. As crazy as that sounds, but definitely, like Mechie more probably from a one-off standpoint. And then, as we talk about cheap wide receivers too, Kev, this Keon Coleman situation has opened up a lot for Buffalo in the standpoint of, Josh Palmer could be in play, was popular a couple of weeks ago. I remember when that report came out. He's only 3,600. It's hard to trust these Buffalo receivers, right? The way that Josh Allen throws the ball around, that like how many times is one guy going to pop off for that 20-point or plus performance that we see? And then they have Gabe Davis, right, too, back in the mix there as well, and he's 3,300. So it does muddy things up a little bit, but just wanted to bring up that value there against Pittsburgh because I think that those guys will be in the mix or be in the conversation just because of the price tag. Any interest on those guys for you at all, Kev, or how are you feeling about that situation?
I mean, probably I'm going to try to stick with a pretty tight core of plays that I think that really makes sense. Like the Buffalo situation is tough, especially like I'm hoping that Dalton Kincaid is back this week because I think he's the like the engine of this passing game. Like we've seen it since he's been out. Like it's fallen off a cliff without him. Like he is by far their best pass catcher they have, even though he plays more of a limited role where everybody else is kind of like all over the place. In terms of usage, in terms of opportunities. And so, like, it makes it tough to trust. Like, I mean, Khalil Shakir, even at 5,500, like, he just typically doesn't show a lot of. So, like, I know last week he had the 8 for 110, but, for 21 DraftKings points. But, like, for the most part, that's not really where he comes in. And so, like, it makes it tougher to trust any of the Buffalo pass catchers because of it. And so, like, I would rather probably just, if I was going to play a pass catcher for Buffalo, I would want it to be Dalton Kincaid, but that really depends on if he plays. I hope he does because it's a really good schematic matchup. Pittsburgh is really struggling against tight ends this year. And so, like, it could really set up really well for him. But I don't know if I could, I don't think there's really any of them that I would really want to play.
No, I agree. It's just, it's more value, I guess, for whatever that is, if we even need that this week with the way that it's shaping up. But yeah, it doesn't ever feel like sharp plays. But for people who may be interested in playing Josh Allen and you do want to stack him, if there is no Dalton Kincaid, like the ball does have to go somewhere, and if they don't spread it out, could be interesting. I'd probably go Josh Palmer more. But of course, Gabe Davis is back in the mix, and we could get his 3 touchdown performance that he had 5 years ago, or whatever it is that he's still reaping laurels on, and getting
They
jobs
did
from.
bring. I mean, they did sign Brandon Cooks, so
They did sign Brandon with Jesus, yeah. So it's like that's just a muddy situation. If you're playing Josh Allen, just stack him with James Cook and
I feel
call
like
it a
they
day.
try to do whatever they can to get like a deep threat, because like that's why they brought in McCole Hardman. And
Yeah,
then McCole Hardman got hurt and got placed on IR, and then now they're bringing in Brandon Cooks. That's 46 years old, but like, yeah, that's definitely something they need over the offseason, is to try to find somebody that can stretch the field and kind of open things up for Josh Allen.
definitely. And while they're looking for a receiver, maybe the Chiefs can look for somebody as well. But I digress. Let's go to tight end, Kev, and talk about the tight end slate this week, because this one becomes interesting, right? Like we have Trey McBride, right, and finally, right, that's what we've been begging DraftKings to do, is price him like a top 10 or top tier wide receiver, and he comes in at 7,800, which would basically put him at the third highest priced wide receiver on the slate behind Jackson Smith and Jigba and Puka, which feels about right with the production that he's seeing. And Kev, you kind of talked about it earlier. What's he need to do to, really feel like he had to have him put up 30 points? And he's done that in 3 of the 6 matchups that Jacoby Brissett's been the starter. So like you're pretty much, play him at your own risk, quote unquote, right? Because he's 7,800 at tight end, but really you're just getting a third or a fourth wide receiver or fifth wide receiver in there, depending on your build. So it just feels right. The other guys who are just priced above him in the 5K range, I see some merit in them, Kev, but on a slate that like this, where I like there's top end running back talent that I like, and I like the mid range of wide receiver, I'm gonna go cheap. So I don't know how much Brock Bowers I'm gonna get, or George Kittle I'm gonna get in this shitty weather game that you're alluded to, or even Tyler Warren being back on the slate with the way that Daniel Jones is banged up and just going against this Houston defense. So Dalton Kincaid, if he were to be active, would be really interesting to me at 4,500. I would really be keen on getting to that spot. He's only $200 more than Arondé Gatson, who you mentioned, at 43, which I think shapes right now is going to be a solid popular play. Another popular play that I could see, who I always battle with, right, is Kyle Pitts at 4K. Again, it's like Kirk Cousins back in the mix. There's no Drake London, against this Jets team. Like I could see him becoming in, being fairly popular, and a popular Kyle Pitts is just not one that I ever want to play. But I guess I'll monitor his ownership and kind of see where things come in. On the cheap end, Kev, this is where it gets a little bit fun for me, I guess, and I'll toss it to you, because I think as it stands, I do still want to try to get Trey McBride in. I think that, that's the reason why I'm looking at Tyrod stacks. That's the reason why I would be considering like a Cam Ward stack, and how cheap it is, because you could still just get this guy who's going to put 30 points up at a position where how many of these other guys can put up 30? Like not too much. So if I'm not playing Trey McBride, I might go just dead cheap. Greg Dulcich is 2,500, the bare minimum. I talked about playing Tua, and like he could be back in the mix there with the way that Miami is shaping up on offense. Like I could see Greg Dulcich getting close to double digits at minimum price. I'd be willing to take a shot there. You kind of talked about it. It does feel a little bit point chasey, but Colby Parkinson, on my Rams, Matthew Stafford teams, I could get him in the mix, or any of these other cheap guys too for the Rams that make it interesting. And then Mason Taylor, he's 3,300, not as cheap as these other guys, but he's cheap enough in my Tyrod stacks that I like. I mean, essentially, Kev, what it comes down to is I'm gonna play. And I should mention Gunnar Helm too. If there's no Chigakonku, like Gunnar Helm at minimum, I'm going to be willing to play. I'm going to play a cheap tight end who's tied to my quarterback, who I don't care. I just want to hope that they score a touchdown, and I'll take that. Or I'm going to pay up and play for Trey McBride. I could potentially have some exposure to Kyle Pitts if he's not extremely popular. What that would mean to me is, I don't know, if we get Kyle Pitts at 20% or so ownership, maybe 15 to 20% ownership, I just might look elsewhere. But and more interest in Mooney potentially. But that's just how I'm seeing the slate, and the $2,500 at tight end gets me to do a lot more of what I want to do. What are you looking at tight end this week?
Yeah, I don't have as much interest as the high end. Like, you could definitely play Cherry Prize. You can fit him in, right? But he's
Mhm.
also a little more volatile because of now he really needs to go off to really kill you, which he definitely can. Like, I mean, he's definitely the best tight end on the slate. And if he goes out, even if he goes out, I think it puts up 25, and the next closest tight end puts up 15. Then he probably was still the optimal captain, depending on even without Price. But
Yeah.
um,
Optimal option.
yeah, or yeah, did I say captain?
Yeah, you did.
Showdown. I'm
If you're playing Showdown Slate for for that, you definitely could.
Yeah, I'm
But
so
yeah,
used to thinking about showdown slates. Yeah.
definitely.
So, but the optimal tight end on here. But other than that, like Brock Bowers, it's tough with Bowers because obviously he's the number one wide receiver. I mean, he's like their number one. He's their number one weapon in the passing game. It's not even close. But the Chargers have actually been really good against tight ends this year. I mean, Derwin James always does
Well,
a
they
hell of a
have
job.
been, right?
Yeah.
Every time, every
Yeah.
year that Derwin James has been healthy, it feels like.
Yeah, outside of, I mean, Kelsey gets them every once in a while, but for the most part, they've done a really good job. And then Kittle, we already talked about it. Like, schematically, it's actually a really good matchup for George Kittle, but it just, this weather just not makes it mean want to play him at all.
Yeah.
And so Tyler Warren, we kind of talked about Daniel Jones and the injury that he's dealing with, really makes me nervous. And the Titans have also pretty good. So it really gets down to, like, if Kincaid plays, I'm definitely going to have ownership on Kincaid. I've already talked about Aronde Gatson. Absolutely love him. I already talked, kind of mentioned all the stuff that I love him for. Juwan Johnson, I think, is a really strong play at $4,200
Hmm.
against the Dolphins. The Dolphins have struggled against tight ends quite a bit. I want to see, it's kind of interesting to see what's going to happen with Darren Waller, if he's going to get activated or not. We kind of saw those, he was really smashing before he went down with that injury. 17.7, 18.8 DraftKings points. Now it is on like a little bit more limited opportunity. He was also heavily involved in the red zone, but the matchup is still pretty strong. He's 3,900, so like he could be in play. Now we talked about the Titans tight ends, and I just kind of wanted to look to see kind of where things stood between these two, especially recently. Like the last 4 games, it really has been um, it's been pretty close for the most part.
Hmm.
Conquo is running like a little bit more routes, 71 routes to 48 routes, but Gunnar Helm has actually been the better tight end between the two of them. And for the matchup, again, the Jaguars are a team that runs cover 3 at a decent clip. It's not as high as some of these other teams, 33% of the time. But Gunnar Helm has been the better option. He has 0.51 fantasy points per route run against cover 3 compared to just 0.36 for Chicago. And it's a pretty split on, because actually, even despite the fact that Chicago has more routes, is running more routes, Gunnar Helm has actually out targeted him, has 3 more targets than he does over their last 3 games. So he's a 25% target per route run rate over that span. And so, like, Gunnar Helm, I think you could look at, and like I've said, this is a phenomenal matchup. The Jaguars are, I mean, nobody's as bad as the Bengals, but they've
Hmm.
been terrible against tight ends, below the Bengals for sure. But, like, 7 touchdowns, like I've already mentioned, and Gunnar Helm was $2,600. And so I think he's kind of a sneaky play that you could fit in if you want to fit in all these studs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's gonna be key. And yes, we will. Your boy will definitely be monitoring tomorrow's afternoon report to see if Darren Waller does get activated, because I don't know if he will. But if he does, then I'll probably have interest in him as well too at 3,900. Kev, let's talk defense and special teams as we close it out for the people. Again, guys, this is the DJ Nation podcast powered by the Fantasy Authority at FF_authority is where you can find us on Twitter and X. We're breaking down the NFL DFS Week 13 picks for you here. on a Friday night, a couple days before the Sunday main slate takes off for Week 13. And we're talking defense right now, Kev, to break it down. And there's some good spots at the top, which usually, we always talk about paying down. I do think there's viable spots to pay down for. Like I could see myself getting to some Jets. I mean, it's Kirk Cousins on the other side, even with Bijan there. They could be opportunistic, even with the players that they've shipped off to other teams. 2,400, I could definitely get behind that. Texans are 2,900 against Daniel Jones if he really is dealing with some stuff and banged up. Even with them being on the road, you got to contain Jonathan Taylor, and that's it. A couple defenses have been doing that as of late, so to speak. So maybe Houston is the next one to be able to do so. I do have interest in the Colts on the other side at 3,100. Do have interest in the Dolphins as well at 3,300 this week. There's a lot of fun defenses that you can choose from. At the top, I mean, the Seahawks, I think people are going to try and find ways to get the Seahawks in at 3,900 going against this Minnesota struggle. It's tough, right, Kev? Because I could see myself, wanting to get behind that as well too. $100 more for the Chargers is a little bit intriguing, with them being in that late window there. We always talk about pivots, and if you had $100, Seahawks were more popular. Just pay, if you had 100 left, you could get them less popular defense in the Chargers, but the chalk defense, this is the week that chalk defense will hit, because that's just how shitty the week is shaping up, that we'll get Seahawks putting up 20-some points. Rams as well at 3,800. I think I could get behind going against Bryce Young. The way that they've been playing is enticing. Kev, what stands out to you at defense this week? Where are you going?
I mean, so like the Texans, I definitely think are in play, especially with the Daniel Jones stuff. But I just think the Browns are definitely in play too. They're 3K. Yeah. But like we talked about this weather, Brock Purdy is terrible in this kind of environment. And Brock Purdy in general, if you can get pressure on Brock Purdy, he really struggles. And I've talked about this so much. Like he is very much like a Derek Carr. Like that's how Derek Carr is. Like if Derek Carr, you can get pressure on Derek Carr is really when he struggles. And that's the same way with Brock Purdy. Like you get pressure on him, he is going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to throw interceptions. And we saw him last week, against the Panthers, throw 3 interceptions in that game. It just really depends on how much they have to throw the ball. But I think either way, I think the Browns are a really strong play at 3K. Myles Garrett's playing out of his mind this year. Like, the dude is like
that sack record is gone.
Yeah, like an injury would have to happen for that sack record to not fall, because he is just playing at an unreal pace. So Browns, I definitely like them. I think the Dolphins are a really good play too against the Saints. The Dolphins have actually been playing pretty solid defense, and recently, even after the trades they made, and so they actually, I think they're top 3 in pressure rate on the year. But even over their last couple of games, they've been productive. And the Saints allow the 6th most DraftKings points to tight ends to defenses. And I mean, this is not really an offense that scores a lot of points. They're averaging 15.5 points per game, which is the 4th lowest rate in the league. And so, like the Dolphins, I think are in play at $3,300 against Tyler Shook. So I do like them as well. And then, the game's gross, but I mean, at least I will say Atlanta is at least somewhat interesting too, because the Falcons have accumulated 15 total sacks for their first 8 games of the season. But over the last 4, they've accumulated 23 sacks over the last 4 games. 23.
That's insane.
Yeah. So they have definitely been getting after the quarterback. They definitely can with Tyrod Taylor back there. So I think the Falcons, if you can get up to them at 35. I mean, obviously, no one has to tell you like the Chargers are a great play, the Seahawks are a great play, the Rams are a great play, the Jags are a great play. Like all those defenses make sense, but they're also a lot more expensive. I mean, the Seahawks against Max Brosmer, man. Like I don't know. Like they could be. I remember years ago, who was the quarterback for the Bills? Like prior to Josh Allen, the dude that came in and he threw like, it was like 4 or 5 like interceptions.
Oh, Nathan Peterman.
Is that who it was? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that might have been it. And he threw a couple of pick sixes. Like it could look like that.
He was the Matthew Schaub of the East Coast.
Yeah,
just giving out pick sixes for fun.
It didn't last very long. They moved to him as a starter, but anyways, like it could get really gross here with Max Brosmer at quarterback. It was already rough with JJ McCarthy. It could be even worse with Max Brosmer back there on the road. Against Seattle, which is one of the tougher places to play in the league. Like
12 is going to be rocking.
Yeah, and with the way the Seahawks have been playing and their defense, like I don't know. So like if you get up there, I mean, I'm never going to talk anybody out of playing the Seahawks defense, but they're $3,900, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to get to that it probably makes it tough to play them.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting. It's like, they're $100 cheaper than the Chargers. So that's why I feel like the Chargers, they're both in the late slate. So I could see myself. I mean, if you need the chalky defense, you should stick with them. But if you have a nuts lineup and you could take a shot on something, with just $100 pivot on defense there, the Chargers are still in an incredible spot too. So, but yeah, definitely fun. I think from the mid range, Kev, you definitely like Browns a lot, and I'm going to be probably playing the Texans there at 2,900, and then cheap defense. Like I said, I could definitely get behind the Jets. I could possibly get behind even Tennessee too at only 2,200 against Trevor Lawrence. So to see where your builds are going. But yeah, the Browns, Kev, that shot out that makes a ton of sense with the way that game is going and playing against that team. Kev, let's build a Millie Maker team for the people. How about it? Struggling the past couple, just the past 2 weeks only. But we're bound to get back in there, get back into the mix, and really put something home.
I don't even think last week's was bad though. Like it was just like a weird thing.
Yeah,
like,
170.
I think it scored like what 170 or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
170.
That's a pretty strong score.
No, it definitely strong score. Definitely strong score. I think what do we talk about on that slate? There was probably a pivot or two that we should have made going into the slate. Switch off of who?
I think we had Baseball too in that.
Oh, Baseball too. Yeah. So like getting to Emmanuel Wilson, who we didn't have, that just probably could have made some sense with the way that our lineup was constructed. With that, what was that? The Eagles Cowboys game that we attacked. So
but to be fair, I will say that we did it without knowing if Travis Etienne was going to play at the time.
Correct.
It was questionable.
Correct.
That's why we did it.
Yep. So yeah, always room for pivots there on the Millie team, and that's why we appreciate everybody who's rocking along with us. Again, DJ Nation Podcast, powered by the Fantasy Authority. We want to get after it with you. We build this Millie Maker team every week. 147,000 entries this week, Kev. I feel like it's kind of been creeping down a little bit. I believe we're in the 160 range earlier on in the season, and it's always fun. Like we didn't really talk about this, Kev, from an overall standpoint, but as we get to this build, just something to think about here, talk to the people about. It's always fun to see what happens and who's playing the main slate after this Thanksgiving slate has happened, right? Because so many people are invested into the Thanksgiving slate. If you won big, you're probably more, than likely to, okay, I'm going to roll that over and get some action in on Sunday because, we only have so many of these weeks to go. But if you definitely were playing heavy, or even if you were just playing, right, a little bit, and you got put through the ringer on Thanksgiving, then you got a couple of days left, and you're like, oh, do I really want to go after it? And with it being an ugly slate, quote unquote, on paper, it's always fun to see who's going to be in this tournament. So I just allude to that because I could see some people, maybe this is the week that they choose to skip of the year, or something like that, what have you. But this is the DJ Nation Podcast. We always get after it, so we're going for that 2.5 Millie Maker tournament, the 1 mil to first, $20 entry. We're gonna build this team out, Kev, and I don't even remember who's it on, Kev, to kind of start it off, but I'll do it this week. I'll remember that you got it for week 14. I'm gonna put Devon H. in this lineup because we both like him so much.
That's funny. I already have him in there, so that's funny. I decide if we should do a Cam Ward or Justin Herbert build.
I won't talk you off either one, Kev.
I'm gonna go Justin Herbert.
Okay.
You know what? No, screw it. Let's see what we can do with Cam Ward. Let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
Let's do Cam Ward.
I'm gonna put in. I'm gonna put in Helm as it stands because he's so cheap, and just we can figure it out if Chig is out or what have you. But we can make pivots. He's 2,600.
Well, we're just gonna play Chimera DK.
Yep. And then
full on triple.
I think I'm more. I want to go Thomas on this. I'm fine if you want to put Etienne in too, but
What are you worried about Thomas? I mean, I don't know. He's worried about how much especially now you have Jacoby Myers in the offense and everything. But all right, Brian Thomas is. I'm cool with that. So just for the sake of purposes, let's just throw in the Browns defense. All right, so we got some money to play with. We got about $7K remaining per average
that's what
player
I'm
for a
saying.
running
I
back,
mean,
wide receiver, and a flex.
yeah, we could do some weird things here. I mean, I'm almost apt to say let's just say fuck it and play Brees too. He's 6K. That's 74.50 for a wide receiver and flex.
So we can fit him because we have more than enough money. So I'm just gonna play Puka. I've already talked about how much I love him.
Love it.
Oh, throw Puka in there.
Okay, so then we're 59.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have McBride, so we're throwing Wilson in this lineup at 5,900.
This might be the grossest lineup that we've built, like just in terms of like the teams and the players we're playing on it. But like I feel like this weekend, I think there's a real shot that like we're gonna get some like some of these gross games can really go off, right? Like with
Yeah,
bad teams in it. Let me put it that way. Like where like it's built where you kind of see it, year after year where really bad teams all of a sudden just go off and they have like high scoring games because both teams are not great. And so like their defenses aren't great and where things can get weird. And I feel like this weekend we're gonna see something like that where one of these kind of grosser games and with these grosser teams in them, I should say, has a chance to kind of get weird. And so yeah, I love this. I like this team.
yeah, I'm fine with it too. I mean, the way that it just kind of shaped out, we use all the salary, which is kind of rare for us to do. But as it currently stands, we have Cam Ward, Devon Achan, Brees Hall, Shamir DK, Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nakua, Gunnar Helm, Michael Wilson, and Browns D as our Millie Maker team for Week 13. We're going to submit this in. Obviously, we'll be paying attention to the injury reports. We'll play around with the lineup should anything occur that would greatly affect that lineup to build out. And that's going to do it for the Week 13 main slate edition of the DJ Nation podcast. Shout out to everybody who was rocking along with us this week as we gave you a double dose of the DJ Nation podcast. We broke down the Thanksgiving slate for you and then also did the main slate for you this time around. Kev, you got any final words for the people as they gear up for a Sunday main slate of viewing?
Just don't follow all the projections. Like I think that's what everyone else is going to do. I think everyone's just going to be like blindly following projections because there's not, like I've said, there's not a lot of great game environments to go off of this weekend. And so I think just getting a little bit different, going off the board, I think is going to is going to be the way to go. Like I feel like this, like a stack like this going with Cam Ward, where there's not going to be a lot of people that are going to want to play Cam Ward, and something like this can really set you apart.
Definitely. No, it's this is going to be a fun week for sure as we get to build to, and especially for guys like Kevin and myself when we're building multi teams, not just a single bullet. You get to kind of put some pieces together and get some different angles, but still important to have that core. I expect to do so with some of the plays that we talked about already, and I know Kev will do so too. For Kevin Steele, the godfather of TFA himself, Mr. Kevin Steele, iFantasyRat13 is where you can find him on Twitter and X. Myself, Ryan and Williams on Twitter and X at RyanAlexander_W. We will catch you guys next time for the Week 14 breakdown. We've been doing this week after week after week, giving you DFS goodness, giving you the DFS breakdown, and we appreciate you guys rocking along with us all season long. It's been a fun one, and we're coming up at the back end, which definitely makes me sad, but still a lot to be had as we get into the final month of football before playoffs. Season-long playoffs start to roll around, NFL playoffs start to roll around, all that goodness, and we'll still be back giving you some goodness there later on in the season. But I digress. It's been fun. It's the DJ Nation podcast, and if we don't see you before next time, we hope to see you on the DFS streets. Get in that money. We'll catch you. Peace.